and to serve our families and our children in Madison County. We ask that you protect our families, protect our students, protect our staff as we manage this COVID-19 pandemic. We thank you for wisdom and guidance as we lead our students and families. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Brookins. All right. Informational items. Nurse Donna Stiles had some nursing services updates. Ms. Stiles, who, mind you, has been working extremely hard and tirelessly day in and day out, and we appreciate the work that she and her and the nurses have been doing. So,
thank you.
the floor is yours.
Got a PowerPoint that, there we go, thank you. It is always an honor to have an opportunity to speak to the board and give an update on health services, and have lots of updates to give. The nurses have been really, really busy over the last few months, and like everyone else in the system, worked very hard. So I do have some numbers, COVID numbers, and some protocol things to share with you, but I'm going to brag just a little bit about the nurses because they've given me the opportunity to do that. Health Services Department. See if I can get my little, there we go. We currently have 30 full-time nurses, and we have 20 contract RNs or somewhere about that. And we have one fabulous clerical aide that keeps us straight. We have a staff at every staff member RN at every school, and we have 2 nurses at Sparkman High School, our largest school, and then we have 2 at Legacy Elementary with a one-on-one student. The CARES Act has made it possible for me to hire a temporary full-time RN to assist me this year, and I must say it has been very, very valuable. You know, I want to make sure that I thank our administration here. Madison County Schools has always been known as a system who values their nurses and nursing services, and I think that prepared us to be able to meet the needs as we went through this pandemic. Our system is unique in our area that we require a BSN entry level for all nurses who are full-time nurses. We also have several nurses that have master's degree. We have 4 that have a master's degree in nursing education, 1 in nursing leadership, and 2 in nursing informatics, which has proven to be an asset during this time too. We also have 10 nationally certified school nurses. To put that in perspective, there's only 20 nationally certified school nurses in the state of Alabama. So Madison County Schools holds half of that population. So I think that's, and our system again has recognized that, and we appreciate that. So all that to say that all this education and all these years of expertise, and I will say that our nurses stay in their schools for many, many years. A lot of nurses are in their schools for 20 years. They retire there, so they know their population and they know their community, and they're very engaged. And I think that has served us well during this time because we didn't have to hire new nurses like a lot of systems. That's been great. We all know that healthy children make better learners, and I think that's proven during this pandemic. All right, so this is some of our good-looking team. We were able to purchase lots and lots of personal protective equipment, masks, gowns, gloves, and all those things, and some of those things were in short supply. So we ended up purchasing 2 jackets for each of the nurses, and they used that as a protective device. And so if they came in contact with someone who was infectious, then they just switched out their jacket, took it home, and washed it. So this is a picture of some of our nurses sporting their new Madison County Schools Health Services blue and white jackets. All right, I'm going to talk about the protocol that we currently have. As we all know, it's changed multiple times, and you know, we know more about the virus, so we know how to deal with it. Hopefully in a better manner. This protocol has been in place for several weeks now. You can find the protocol in our Madison County School reopening plan. It's the last document in the reopening plan, and it speaks to quarantine and isolation protocols for employees and students. So it's a very clear document, and we have referenced it many times. It's easy to share that information with parents. We follow the Back to School Toolkit, and this was developed by Alabama Department of Public Health and Centers for Disease Control. Their guidelines. Dr. Landers is our pediatric infectious disease specialist in the state of Alabama, and I've heard Mr. Perkins say that he has many conversations with her on a routine basis, and she is fabulous. She's always open to answer any questions that we have. So we've got some terms here that we're using routinely. One of them is isolation. Isolation is when someone is infectious, so that's your 10-day time frame that we're going to ask you to remain isolated away from everyone else. So you would be isolating 10 days from your first symptom or the positive test, depending on if you were asymptomatic or if you had symptoms. Quarantine is a word that we say every day, all day as well. We have lots and lots of students who are quarantined. Right now we have over 1,000 students, faculty, and staff who are quarantined, but that's the whole point of tracking. We want to have lots of people quarantined so we don't have a lot of people who are positive, and that's what we've been able to do up until this point. So quarantine is 14 days from the last contact with the individual who is infectious. So if mom tests positive and daughter is in school, then we're going to ask that daughter quarantine for 14 days from the last contact with mom. Close contact, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the 615 rule. The 615 rule is when someone is in contact with another person less than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. Some people that are a lot smarter than I am decided that was an appropriate time frame to determine that you could spread the virus if you were less than 6 feet, more than 15 minutes, with someone who tested positive for COVID-19 or has lost taste or smell. So if someone has lost taste or smell, as Dr. Landers says, you can take it to the bank, they're going to be positive for COVID. So we send close contacts home, according to our protocol, close contacts home if they have a loss of taste or smell or if the person is positive. We track 2 days before the symptoms appear or the specimen collection date, whichever is earlier. And then case is any person who is in isolation or quarantine due to COVID-19. That's a pretty simple definition, but that's basically what it is. So we consider any time we quarantine someone or ask them to be in isolation, we consider them a case. And we have tracked over 5,000 cases since August the 4th. So we've been really busy. You might hear the health department say trace. We call ours tracking because we have a Madison County School COVID tracker that we enter all the data in, and that is auto-populated to central office. But we track in our school system. So we're concerned more with students in our system, teachers in our system, volunteers in our system, SROs, anyone that's in a school building or on our campuses, we want to make sure that we're tracking them. Tracing, we submit the information to the health department if someone's positive, and that generates a report for them, and so they contact that person, they send a letter out, and they trace. They're tracing community, maybe church, people in and out of the home, but we're more concerned with our students, faculty, and staff, and people that are in and out of our buildings. So that's why that's why we differentiate between track and trace. It's kind of the same thing, we just don't trace outside our school system. All right. How does the nurse track a case? They asked me just to kind of go over this so you would have some idea, because it is quite the process. So if a nurse receives information, maybe mom calls the principal or the teacher, then the nurse is going to open that case, and she's going to call that employee, or more likely I'll call the employee, and she might call the parent of the student, and she's going to discuss when did their symptoms start, what are their symptoms, because again, if it's loss of taste or smell, we're going to quarantine their close contacts. She's going to discuss their symptoms with them. We're going to discuss whether or not they're going to be tested, have they been tested, close contacts, and then we're going to call that teacher and we're going to say, can we have that seating chart for all those classes that you have of students classes that student's in. So all the seating charts that child, if it is in intermediate, middle, or high school, then there's going to be multiple. We're going to call that bus driver, and we're going to ask for his seating chart. We're going to call that coach. We're going to ask for his teammates. We're going to call that band director. Whatever extracurricular activities this individual is involved in, we're going to notify those people so we can determine if they're less than 6 feet, more than 15 minutes with this person who has lost their taste of smell or positive. Then the nurse is going to enter the data into the Madison County School COVID tracker, and if the person is positive, we're going to submit that information to the ADPH report card so they can in turn start their investigation. And I think what's important here, one of the things that is important is all this information should be done within a 4-hour time frame. So it's a really, it's important because we don't want Johnny to come to school Monday morning if he needs to stay at home and be in quarantine. We don't want the bus driver to show up to drive his bus. So there's a lot of calls and emails going on the weekends and in the evenings. Then she's going to make sure that she notifies all the close contacts that have been determined by phone. She's going to send the COVID parent checklist. She's going to document an I-Now. Somewhere in between that, she's notified me what she's doing. And then she's going to, at that point, communicate with her administrator, because the administrator will take it from there and contact all the other people who may have been in class with that individual but might not be a close contact. So it may be that the principal sends something out to the department or the classroom or the band, and at that point, that's where they take it. And then, there's a lot of things that can happen in between opening and closing a case. If we have someone who's quarantined and that person gets sick, then they're going to notify us, and we're going to talk about testing, and the dates may change. So this is a very fluid document that we have. It's live, and as Mr. Perkins and the other department heads say, they look at it many, many times a day, and it changes often. So that's again the process of doing it. She can close that case when the employee returns to work or the student returns to school. A lot of our students and staff are on their second and third quarantine, and it is just the nature of the beast. And we'll continue to do that as long as we need to. However, I would just applaud the difficult decision of going hybrid. I know that was, I've had a little bit of insight into some of the decision-making, and it is not taken lightly. A lot of factors involved, and from health services standpoint, I think that was a very wise decision. So thank you for supporting and making this tough decision. So I'm on to the next slide. So this is our current COVID-19 situation. This is hot off the tracker, as in 3:30 today. I'm sure it's changed a lot, but for the majority, these are the numbers. So we currently have 110 staff in a 14-day quarantine and 31 staff in a 10-day isolation who are actually sick. And you can understand now why hybrid and some of the schools have had to go remote, because if you don't have the staff, you can't teach the students. We have 957 students that are in a 14-day quarantine and 63 students in a 10-day isolation. We currently have 1,051 open cases. Since August the 4th, we have tracked 5,131 cases. I was like, that number just doesn't feel right. 5,131 cases we have recorded so far. All right. So then I wanted to just kind of give you some idea of the trend, and this is not exclusive to Madison County Schools. This is the state of Alabama and our country in general. You can see July, we didn't have any cases. August, September, October, and then it has just gone straight up. Research is showing, or the scientists are saying that, we'll spike again after a couple of weeks after Thanksgiving, and we're already seeing that. I think we're in a dip this week, and then next week I think we're going to see the numbers rise. So went to hybrid just in time, because with a hybrid schedule, then we're going to have essentially half of our students in the building. So if we're having to quarantine, they're not going to be sitting as close, and there's not going to be as much movement. So it's just going to help hopefully cut down on the quarantines, and as a result, cut down on the positive cases. This graph, I just wanted to share. Dr. Landers has made this comment multiple times that adolescents seem to be our spreaders, just because of the nature of what they do and how they act and who they are. They're teenagers. So you can see here the red is your middle school and high school students, and they're involved in sports, they're driving, they have jobs, they have lots of friends, and they believe that they are invincible. So, we're trying to do a lot of teaching, but it's just as not a controlled environment as you have in the elementary school setting. All right. So all this to say, we have been doing lots of work, and we've been looking at better ways to do, what we have been doing. So we've been looking at health management software. iNow is leaving, and we do have something that we've seen snippets of what would be available in Power Schools, but it's not going to have the COVID tracking and case management component, and it's not going to have a lot of the advanced options. I did send you guys some information on Frontline's Education Electronic Health Record and School Nursing Management System. The COVID component, it's very robust. It will give us lots and lots of data. It's got a great communication component where now the nurses are calling the parents from their cell phones in their own homes. With this component, we have direct intranet communication, so that's going to be really a great tool. We did look at other software systems, and Frontline is just above and beyond anything else that was out there. So it's the most viable tool to replace iNow Health and to assist with immediate relief of manual COVID tracking, case management, which is not going to go anywhere anytime soon. We should have nurses start their training on this program December the 21st. Frontline program is funded by the Coronavirus Relief Funds through 6/30/22. So we have been able to provide lots of tools for the nurses to better serve the students and the staff in our schools because of the COVID relief money, CARES Act money, and that's been a blessing. But I would just like to say that on behalf of the health services team, I appreciate the board's support and Madison County School Administration, because we feel valued, and I don't know that I've ever been more proud of working with a team of ladies. So this is one of them. She was returning medications at the end of the school year to parents when we were full donning and gloving, and I said, let me take your picture, and I didn't get within 6 feet of her when I did it. So that's just kind of an update from health services. We're going to continue to do what we're doing, and I think it's we're continuing to collaborate and educate and mitigate. And does anyone have any questions about anything that as long as it's not COVID related, I'll be glad to answer it. I'm just kidding.
No, Donna, we appreciate you coming in this evening and giving us that update. It's you and your staff have done an excellent job of keeping our students and faculty and staff members as healthy as possible during this weird time in our lives. So, but I do have a question here, real quick.
Okay.
A student or an employee that is COVID positive, that is in isolation, you put up their 10 days, and I guess my question is, they can return to school, to the classroom, and to their place of duty after that 10-day period, provided that they're no longer symptomatic, I would assume, correct? They cannot.
Well, according to our protocol, The verbiage is fever-free 24 hours, which has always been Madison County School policy, but the next statement says symptoms improving. So a lot of times what we're finding is that people may not have that taste and smell for weeks, but they return to work. So as long as their symptoms are improving and they're fever-free, they can return to work. Don't have to retest. You know, there are.
That was my question. I mean,
Yes.
we aren't mandating it. It's not mandated by the CDC or the ADPH. It's just, you know, they're returning, but could they potentially be asymptomatic when they return, even if they're not displaying symptoms? And I'm asking you to speculate. I'm just curious.
I don't know the answer to that. The research is showing that they are not infectious. There are if someone has a lot of comorbidities or there's a certain population that can shed the virus longer, but they've determined that I guess the average American, the infectious period is 10 days, which is pretty typical for any viral viral illness, but, we're in contact with that person, especially if they're in isolation before they return to work, most individuals. And I spoke with someone yesterday who was scheduled to come back yesterday, and the person did not sound well. And, we encourage the person to stay home if they are not improved enough to come back to work. And sometimes they're returning half days or part-time. But we do have a lot of older employees, and some have really struggled with that. There is some research or there's some CDC information that may change, and it may be that they are going to ask people to test, and the quarantine might not be as long, but right now that's not, that hasn't come down the pike. So right now, it's 10 days, return to work if your fever is gone and your symptoms are improving.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't answer your question.
No, you did. No, you did.
Yeah,
You
I think,
did. I mean,
we
it's
just
confusing
don't
to
know.
everybody, and I mean, I think, and it seems to change on a daily, routinely basis. So that's why I was asking the question. But no, I think you all do a great job, and you've certainly been a most valuable member of the team moving in the last several weeks and months, and we appreciate all that you've done to make the life and the ability to continue to educate our children that much better. So thank you.
Thank you.
I had one, or maybe a couple of questions. So, when a person quarantines, are you keeping any kind of statistics to know that how many of those people actually are positive? I mean, because that's taking a ton of our kids out of school. Are
It
we
is.
getting really any benefit from it?
It is. Well, it's not necessarily a benefit, but a hazard if we don't. So I think we're looking at it more in that respect. We have had a lot of people ask that question, and when we get our new software, we will be able to run that report, and we do try to look at the trends, and we are seeing more. The close contacts, it kind of depends on the activity. A lot of our positives are resulting from things that are outside our school, not inside our school. I would say the majority, people are being exposed at Thanksgiving dinner or riding in the car for 4 hours or spending the night with their friend, and they're bringing it into the school that way. But in the classroom setting, we're not seeing a lot of positives, but one reason we're not is we are quarantining and we're taking other measures. Of course, in the elementary schools, you've got the barriers and you've got all the X's on the floors, and the teachers control the coming in and the going out of the students. But I don't have that specific data, but I'd like to see that too.
We don't have any leeway of relaxing it, I don't guess, just to keep more kids in school.
Well, I think, and just listening to the conversations that the leadership team, it's been very eye-opening. My opinion is if we can keep them in school 2 days a week, we're quarantining a lot of people. So we're not going to be quarantining as many people because we're going to cut our population in half. Mm-hmm. And if you trace 2 days prior to, if you've got your group that comes on Monday and Tuesday and your group that comes on Thursday, Friday, you're not going to trace 2 days. You're not going to ever interfere with the other group and have to quarantine from the other group unless they're playing sports or some kind of extracurricular activities. So there's consistency of staying in school 2 days a week and not having to quarantine, where now there's a lot of quarantines going on. And if we're following our back-to-school toolkit, no, we follow the protocol Very, very few exceptions, and if there is an exception, then they're to notify myself, and I notify Mr. Trawick, and we look at it with the principal if there's some odd thing, or if sometimes we have physicians that will order things that are not in protocol. So sometimes I have to go to my superiors and say, can you speak with this physician who said, it's really not 14 days, it's 10 days, and we can't allow that student to be back in the building if our protocol says 14, and that's what we're following. So we don't have any leeway. That answer your question?
Yeah, and the second one is when the notification goes out to be quarantined, who is that supposed to go to?
It depends. If it's in an elementary school setting, then the nurse is going to call the parent. Now, if the student's in the building and the student starts to cough and have a high fever, then the nurse is going to assess that student. The student is going to be placed in the isolation room, and the nurse is going to call the parent. The parent's going to come to the school, and the nurse is going to go over the COVID parent checklist with that parent face-to-face. It could be that the person's already at home, or it's an employee, and I'm going to call that person and say, what kind of symptoms are you having? This is what your return date would be, pending symptoms appearing, those kind of things. So it's usually a phone call.
But if it's quarantined, they're not symptomatic, what's the protocol for contacting?
Phone call.
To,
Now, I will say that there's, to the parent or to the employee, there have been a couple of situations where there's very large groups, and it's on a Saturday night. So the principals have been fabulous and been very gracious to do a BB-com or, some kind of blast to the team or this large group with a follow-up call from the nurse the next day. But almost always it's going to be a phone call saying, I'm so sorry to let you know that your child has been determined to be a close contact with an individual. Of course, we never give names of students or employees, but your child has been determined to be a close contact to this individual, and we would like to ask that you quarantine for 14 days.
and then, Alan, the other thing is, like we talked about, is just to run that software through IT, just to make sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When do you think the software is you're going to have that software available beginning of the new year?
Our go-live date is January the 4th.
Okay.
So we should feel fairly comfortable because I believe the kids come back the 18th. Is that right? Should know that.
That long?
That's when the second semester, no, kids.
No, that's the second semester.
I was gonna say, whoa.
Yeah, the kids come back the 4th.
come back
I'm so
the 4th.
sorry, I should know that, but that's so far away. I'm trying to make it day by day. Yeah, January the 4th is our go-live date. So we're going to hopefully do some training on the e-learning day and do some more training in between Christmas and first of the year.
Outstanding.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Okay.
All right, Mr. Cubic, personnel policy update recommendations.
We get the man and the person this time.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Board, Superintendent. Last Tuesday, I sent you an email with the new policy draft and the rationale behind it. Ms. Bass had attended some meetings with federal programs in the state of Alabama, and she had found out some information in reference to working from home authorization and whether or not that meets the compliance with federal regulations. And so this policy that was drafted is to grant the superintendent the authority to allow for an alternative work setting in cases such as pandemics for health-related or weather closures or school closures, or there's unique situations that grants him the authority. And the rationale is so that we are in compliance with the federal regulations. And so I want to kind of just give you a heads up if there was any information or any questions that you had in reference to this policy. I know Ms. Bass is tuned in this evening. She's on from either her office or from home. And so if you have any questions of either her or I, we'd be happy to address them.
The only question I have, aside from the COVID obviously being a truly unique situation, what would be considered another unique situation? Alan? I mean, what would
You mean a unique situation
to
for?
where they would go into an alternate work? It says it would provide the superintendent with board authority to establish an alternative work setting, work at home under unique situations. And So it says under, what are the unique situations that we would be?
Well, I mean, it's a pandemic, weather-related, just anything that would cause a disruption that would allow, that they would need to be able to work from home.
Okay,
It's something that interrupts the day, interrupts the school, day that causes them not to be able to be physically in that particular building,
okay,
but are able to still provide their function, their
okay.
do their duties at home.
And we're doing this currently. This just kind
This
of.
is formalizing it.
Formalizing it.
Right, yes.
Correct, sir.
Yes.
And to address your question, Mr. Weiss, is that since we have to put this policy in place, by having the unique situations, is we do not know, no one expected this. So, we do not know what's out there, but this gives the board the authority to grant the superintendent, or the powers to grant the superintendent the authority in case something else in the future comes up. Or let's say, for instance, we did have a school closures now that we've been in remote learning, and let's say something happened at a school, we'll just say a train wreck of some sort, and there was a chemical spill, and that school had to be closed for a week for containment or whatever it was, a unique situation. This may allow us to be able to do something from remote where teachers could still teach and we could still have school. So the intent was just to have a unique situation in there to kind of give us a broader spectrum of what possibly could happen. As
fine.
we know, we didn't expect this.
Okay. Any other questions?
We appreciate your consideration. Thank you, sir.
The 2021-2022 high school academic guide, Mr. Solly?
Good evening. I wanted to, first of all, I wanted to apologize to y'all for not having this to you well in advance. Just last few weeks have been another challenge placed upon us this year. So been working through some other things and stuff, but hopefully between what I'm able to share with you tonight over the next few weeks, certainly as you look over this document, if you have questions, let me know before it comes up for a vote. I'll be happy to, answer any questions that you have. We have worked very hard to keep any changes this year to a bare minimal, and I think you'll see that. Jeff, you got it? Okay. So just to, well, there we go. Okay. So a few changes to the document. I believe it's on page 8. We've added a few new dual enrollment providers. Auburn University has an online dual enrollment program, Auburn First, very similar to what the University of Alabama has. University of North Alabama, we've added them as a DE provider in Jacksonville State University. On page 15, we've added a graduation requirement chart at the request of special education. On page 14, there's a graduation requirement chart for general ed students, and then this one on page 15 encompasses general ed students that are on either of the two of the special ed graduation tracks. So they had asked that we put those together, so we moved that up. The biggest changes this year lie on page 21 with our new math course of study. That was approved last year. It will go into effect for Madison County and our high schools with the 21-22 school year. Some fairly significant changes here. Traditionally, in our high school math progression, students start off in 9th grade with Algebra 1, move into geometry, some course of Algebra 2 or its equivalent, and then finish up with a 4th math course. That will change next year. Geometry with data analysis will become the incoming math course. One of the changes that kind of has a ripple effect from this new course of study is we will no longer be offering courses for high school credit prior to grade 9, where in previous years we offered Algebra 1 and in some rare cases geometry in the middle grades, those opportunities, there may be, like, we've got 2 or 3 kids who may get grandfathered into a situation that will take geometry next year, but by and large, the course of study prohibits that from happening in the future. So high school courses are high school courses, middle school courses are middle school courses. So all of our 9th graders next year will take geometry with data analysis. It will be a unique thing because most of our 10th graders will also take geometry with data analysis because they took Algebra 1 this year. So we're going to be teaching a lot of geometry next year. Why do I say that? Because in just a minute, we're going to talk about a textbook adoption. And we're going to have to buy a lot of geometry books for next year. Probably, we're going to have to think through a plan so that we don't overspend for 1 year while we deal with this 1 year anomaly of having really 2 grade levels taking geometry. But after that initial course, students might take Algebra 1 with probability, and that will be for students that have not had Algebra 1 previously. So that's why that says 1 or 0. Students may or may not take that. In the future, students in middle school will have to take Accelerated Math 7 and Accelerated Math 8 in order to be exempt from taking Algebra 1 with probability. The third course in the sequence is Algebra 2 with statistics. Every student will have to take that. Now, this is one of the things that, again, I apologize, but I will make this as accurate a document as I know information. Today, I was told, not officially but unofficially, that schools will likely be able to offer Algebra 2 with finance, which is a course in an old approved course, that we may still be able to offer that for this coming year for students who need a 4th math course. I don't have that official yet, so it's not in the document. I've only put in there what officially I know, but that's something that may be added between now and the time you vote on it. After those 3 courses, they move into a specialized course, and they can choose from pre-calculus, mathematical modeling, and applications of finite mathematics. There's also the opportunity for that 4th course to be, like in our district, AP Stats, AP Calculus, AP Computer Science Principles, or AP Computer Science A. So they also can take dual enrollment. There's a lot of options for that 4th math course. But one of the big challenges, and it's going to be something instructionally, the intention here was to raise the rigor of mathematics in high school, was to kind of set the bar at a new level and expect everybody to reach that level. Algebra 2 with statistics is going to be a rigorous course for a lot of students in Madison County schools and schools across the state to pass as a graduation requirement. So in order to help meet that, the state has added a couple of courses, math labs, which I believe that many of our schools probably will need to use, a course that we can schedule that will allow some extra time and support, help our students be successful in these classes. But those are the new math courses. We will offer a college prep offering for geometry and for Algebra 2. We will not do that for Algebra 1 with probability. Again, these are the other math course options that we offer within our district for credit there. A few things, just to point out a few highlights from our high schools. We offer 21 advanced placement courses in our district. The least number of those offered in any high school is 9. Most of our schools offer 15 and above of those courses. Y'all know this, we've seen this data before, but over 3,000 course enrollments in advanced placement in Madison County out of our 6,000 high school students. So, and we offer those in ELA, math, science, social studies, computer science, and arts. Dual enrollment, really proud. We've looked out, we've expanded to providers where we think it makes sense, where they're offering quality programs, places where our students are eventually going to enroll. And most of those are for general ed dual enrollment credits, but also really proud of our Career Technical Center, building some robust dual enrollment opportunities for our students with Calhoun and welding, machine tool, and automotive technology. We also, this year, we're offering computer science in every one of our high schools. So, you know, I think some positive steps there. We offer over 100 arts courses within our district, and that's band, visual arts, photography, theater, choir. All of those things have multiple levels and multiple opportunities in each of our schools for our students to improve in the arts. And then on Careertech, again, I think it's something that we've made a lot of progress in over the last 2-3 years, is really aligning those courses to workforce needs. And you see that with our health science courses, STEM fields, hospitality and tourism, all of those human services, that encompasses cosmetology and food and wellness in that. But all of these things are things in the greater Huntsville, Madison County area. There's a need for all of these things. So we've done a good job, I think, in realigning the career tech courses to meet what our community expectation is. Obviously, we would like to add more. For instance, in the construction area, you know, expanding that like we tried to do in the past with plumbing, HVAC, all of those sorts of things we know are high wage, high demand jobs in our area, and we would love to be able to do that, as well as add other programs. But this has been something that, you know, we feel has been a positive. But those are just a few of the highlights. You know, one of the things I'm proud of our schools, our 5 high schools plus Sparkman 9, our virtual academy. You know, it's not only doing what I consider to be a pretty robust instructional program, but they do this on top of running a, you know, pretty substantial co-curricular program through athletics and our arts after school, our clubs and stuff. So that's kind of the highlights there, though.
Tim, are you going to bring this, is this going to come to the board for approval at the next meeting?
At the next meeting, yes.
I forget, where are we on the exams for this year?
We are giving exams.
Okay, and so for an AP course, is it spelled out that they take a final, or do they not take a final?
I think the way I think the way we've left it this year that we're taking final exams. I don't believe we have a policy or procedure that.
So an AP student will take their AP exam and their final exam?
I don't think we have it written down anywhere that they don't, that I'm aware of.
And that's the intent, or is the intent not that?
My expectation is that kids take a final exam.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's what our plans are this year.
Okay. And the
Take
second
exams.
one is if somebody has Algebra 2 already, then they don't take it again.
That's correct, yeah. So for our students that are juniors and seniors next, you know, will be juniors and seniors, yes, they will have, if they've had the equivalent course, they wouldn't have to take those. That's correct.
Okay. And one final one on just more personal information, but dual enrollment. So can a child like dual enroll with 2 different schools just to kind of try them out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure can.
Okay.
There's, you know, obviously there's guidelines, and it's in the academic guide what those guidelines are that students have to meet in order to do dual enrollment. But where they do it, as long as it's one of those approved providers, then they can go to multiple ones.
Okay.
I'm feel certain we have students doing that now. So yeah,
Okay.
good.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Mr. Zolli. Math textbook adoption committee, Ms. Fisher?
Maybe North Alabama and Alabama.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. I just wanted to be available to answer any questions that you may have about the textbook adoption committee that was submitted earlier this week. I did want to highlight that it includes over 60 teachers, including 5 math coaches or instructional coaches who are highly skilled in our math programs. We have included 6 building-based administrators, including principals and assistant principals. We included specialists in the field of special education and English learners, and our committee proposal includes 12 parents. All of our feeder families are represented with the parents and teachers. Every school has a representation. Every grade level has representation. And we have paid special attention to make sure that the diversity of our district is reflected in the committee that's being proposed. As we go forward with this committee, we have taken efforts to make sure that all of the adoption processes are online as often as possible to protect our teachers and to safeguard the time out of class that they would be missing in this process. So, are there any questions I can answer for you?
When are you going to have a final recommendation to present back to the board, or when do you expect to have something?
For
the textbooks, yeah.
In a perfect world, it would be the March board meeting. The State Department is, the State Textbook Committee has not yet come back with a short list of those recommended books. Right now, we have a field of 12 publishers with over 30 titles for consideration. We expect when the state board meets in December or possibly January that they will be narrowing that field to what their recommendation is. And so while we're planning on a March recommendation for final consideration, those timelines could play a role in when that happens.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Discussion of system services organization chart. So Jeff, if you want to pull that up for me, please. So for a district such as ours, the size that it is, the many moving parts that we have throughout our district, 20,000 students, our goal is always to service our kids and to do it in the most efficient way, to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that all of their needs are being met through the system services that we offer them, whether it's instructional, whether it is mental, social, emotional, and also in the system services side as far as buses, transportation, IT, those particular areas. And looking at our organizational chart, and the current organizational chart was the slide we just had up there, we're always looking at the opportunity to maximize our potential within our district. And I would like to say that it's important for us to note that the operating structure in most districts operate on off 5% of their budget. And we are actually really streamlined in that we operate off of 2.5%. So we're even well below what the average operating budget actually is, because what we want to do and what we always try to do is maximize what we're able to do and put in the classroom for our students. With that said, we also look at opportunities to broaden what we do with least amount of financial impact on our district. So in looking at the system services side, this is the actual order chart, the organizational breakdown of our system services. Of course, we have an Assistant Superintendent of System Services, Mr. Malone. We have the Director of Auxiliary Services, Director of Information Technology, and then we have the Director of Operations, and of course, you all know that's Mr. Gazort. And if you look at the Director of Operations, you have under there the Supervisor of Transportation, Supervisor of Operations and Maintenance, supervisor of CMP maintenance. Whenever we have either retirement, resignations in particular areas, especially when you're looking at an organizational chart, we always look at what's the best way for us to move forward in maximizing what we do structurally. What is the best way for us to maximize what we do in order to render the best service for our students and for our community? And so a proposal that we're looking at, this is the proposed organizational chart for system services as we move forward. If you notice, we're proposing a director of transportation. Now, I do want to just simply say that this position is one that's funded through the state. So it's a state-funded position. It's not a position that will negatively impact our district financially in any kind of way. But the proposal is to actually hire a director of transportation. We have a retirement, our current supervisor of transportation, who's actually retiring, and his position will actually move to the salary schedule that puts him on the same salary schedule with the supervisor of warehouse, the supervisor of operations and maintenance, and the supervisor of CMP, which actually saves the district even additional funding, additional money as a result. And then we will actually take those additional funds and move it up to the director of transportation, which again, the state actually funds that particular position for our district. And if you notice, that's why it's in green. But if you go further, this is the way it actually would be broken down. So we would have the director of transportation, and under the director of transportation, of course, there's a clerical aide. You have one clerical aide. We have a supervisor of transportation, and then under the supervisor of transportation, that individual will work with certified mechanics, which we have 10 certified mechanics. We have 3 shop assistants, and then we have 2 non-certified mechanics. But the director of transportation will oversee bus drivers and minibus drivers, which we have 189, minibus driver aides, which is we have 31, and then we have the routing specialists, which we have 2 of those individuals. And so what we're looking at is creating this particular structure so that we can more fully focus and maximize our potential in working with our transportation services. Because if you think about having 258 buses, you have multiple routes, you have multiple individuals involved with getting our students back and forth safely every single day. You have individuals who are working on our buses. It's a massive operation, and we've done a great job, I feel. Joe working through transportation, because all of this has been part of his position, along with the things that he does every day with system operations and things of that nature. But this gives us an opportunity to maximize our opportunity to service our students transportation-wise more fully. Ms. Malone, you have anything you want to add to that in terms of specifics as to what they actually would do and things of that nature? Or anything you want to add to it?
Part of it is, just wanted, you've done a great job explaining it, but kind of wanted to go back to this slide here too. Yeah, if you see where, and he's talked about Mr. Kazort a few times, who does a phenomenal job. So by no way is in it, I mean, I don't want anybody to think, well, they're taking transportation from him. But if you, those are 2 huge departments, and those are 2 very important departments, obviously. So Mr. Kazort has been over all of operations, but then he's also been over all of transportation as well. So as Mr. Perkins kind of described all of that, that's 250-something buses, and then also all of your mechanic side too. So then there are kind of 2 pieces to this part, as he explained, because So basically, under this proposal, the Director of Transportations would do more of the paperwork and the reports and for the state, more of the routing. Our routing specialists do a phenomenal job, but it would give them more time to do that, so that then the supervisor could spend more time in the shop and the actual mechanics part of it. It's just hard for one person to handle all of that. And again, the part that it's already state funded is one of the biggest reasons we started looking into this. So that was the only thing that I wanted to add, Mr. Perkins.
Okay, yeah.
So the current position was state funded as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's not a cap as far as what they fund, or we're still within that cap with the director position?
Yes, we would still be within that cap. And Ms. O'Bannon has broken down the numbers. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to impact us financially within our district. So, Ms. O'Bannon, have anything to add to the financial part of that?
Good afternoon, or good evening. I'm trying to get to, no, sir, I sent you an email, sorry again, it was late for this afternoon, but with the surplus we now have that we've carried over in transportation that can be used for transportation purposes, and also we can use it to obviously purchase more buses, so that our fleet renewal percentage goes up as far as buses less than 10 years old. We have, to summarize, we have enough to cover this position that won't be, the extra position that won't be reported in LEAPS until next October. So we have 9 months remaining, and so the state does fund us for that position already at the minimum, but we're still well under the cap, Mr. Curry, as to what the state will fund.
Okay. Thank you.
So if gas prices go up, are we going to end up getting kind of in a bind with the buses?
No, ma'am, we have over 400,000 remaining for unfilled positions that the state reimburses us at the minimum on the salary matrix. And if, obviously, this would be if the fuel costs have been absolutely fabulous for several years now, we should be able to continue to use our fleet renewal monies as well as our state operations transportation fund to purchase buses. Again, the next 2 years should get us caught up as to, if we can continue to purchase 18 to 20 buses every year for the next 2 years, we should be back up where we want to be as far as percentage of funding with fleet renewal. I don't see any impact with this addition as far as what that would do in relation to purchasing buses. I'm not so sure we'll receive the state advancement technology funds next year, but that's also helped us quite a bit, and that's another possibility as far as being able to continue to purchase buses. But we're headed in the right direction and doing a great job with that right now.
And that director of transportation follows the other director, non-certified director salary schedules, is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
As does the supervisor of transportation. It puts them on the same level with the other supervisors.
And it's classified, not certified. Mm. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Mr. Ballone. Okay, if we could pull up the other presentation from, I appreciate it. All right, instructional aids, COVID relief, and substitute pay. So just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. In the month of November, looking at our sub rate, our sub-fill rate, when we pull the numbers on a on a perfect year, and I say perfect relatively speaking, because when it comes down to when it comes down to substitutes, there are no really perfect years, because that is just an area that we struggle with on a continual basis. And it's not just us. Speaking with other districts, superintendents, and other systems, that is a struggle that we actually have to deal with. And on top of that, we are compounded by COVID and what needs to occur in our schools with having additional personnel to cover teachers and other employees, support employees who are out because of either quarantines or positive cases of COVID. In the month of November, when we ran the numbers, we were at a 72% fill rate, which is extremely low. In a good year, normally we're at about a 92% fill rate on comparable years. And so in an effort to help to mitigate the issues that we have and to give our schools some relief as it relates to substitutes and individuals who are able to come in when a teacher is out to help serve in our classrooms, we've looked at proposing to hire additional instructional aides for COVID relief. These will be itinerant aides in our buildings. They will actually be assigned to a school, even though they're itinerant. They'll be assigned to the school, so that if there is an issue with another school that we have to pull within that feeder pattern. So on the screen, you all have an example of what that job description looks like. It's proposed instructional aid COVID relief, 7-hour instructional aid job description, itinerant COVID relief instructional aid, Buckhorn High School feeder, temporary for 2021. So that aid would actually be stationed at Buckhorn High School. And then if there is an opportunity to go to the middle school because there's additional help that's needed, they'll be able to go down to the middle school to help out with whether there's a teacher that's out, additional help with servicing our students and things of that nature. We had to bring this before the board because if you look at number 11, the added essential function would be to serve as substitute teachers as needed. If you could go to the next slide, Jeff. So in looking at the instructional aid position, at step 0, the annual salary would be $13,621. With benefits added to that, you're looking at about a $26,000 annual cost. So that a minimum cost for 27 schools to add one aide to each school at step 0 for 5 months, you're looking at $390,000 is what we're looking at. Now, one additional aide for schools with more than 700 students, so those schools, and we have 9 of them, that have over 700 students, they will get an additional aide in their building. So a total of 36 aides for 5 months at step 0 would cost us $520,000. And that is a number that gives our schools relief where it comes into having individuals in the classroom. So I know our nurse talked about some of the days in which they are quarantined, having someone who can be there consistent for the entire time in that classroom is a big plus for us there. That's the instructional aid part right there, and that's the proposal for that. I also wanted to propose a substitute pay increase. So this is kind of a combined tackle this issue type thing that we're kind of putting together to work together in unison with one another. So our current teacher subpay is $65 per day. And on a typical year, the expenditure for teacher substitutes is $640,000. The proposed teacher sub pay increase would be $75 per day. An estimate of that yearly expenditure would be an additional $100,000. When you start thinking about and looking at the environment that we're in, raising that sub pay could be beneficial in helping us to fill the slots that we have that are vacant because of COVID or other, issues that come up in a school. Raising that pay gives more of opportunity for individuals to say, okay, you know what, I think I'll go ahead and continue to sub. I've had different stories of individuals who would like to sub, but the pay rate was a bit low. And so adding the $10 to that sub rate adds an extra incentive or opportunity for to get individuals into our schools to sub for our teachers. Because what we don't want to continue to happen, we want to be able to fill our slots and fill those particular teaching positions where they're having to be out. And I think this is a way that we can help to do that. In that same chain, looking at support positions. So our current support sub pay is $7.50 per hour, and we have 8-hour support, 7-hour-a-day support individuals, and 6-hour-a-day support individuals. And so the typical yearly expenditure for support substitutes runs our district on a yearly basis about $200,000. The proposal is to raise it to $8.50 per hour, and you can see the numbers of the breakdown of what that actually does for the for the hourly rate. Estimated additional yearly expenditure support for substitutes will run us an additional $50,000. So it is an additional cost, but I think it's a cost that is well worth it when you start looking at the number of individuals based on the issues that we're having through COVID and trying to find substitutes, trying to find individuals to come into our buildings to sub for teachers, and even our support staff who are out because of COVID, and also other areas. It's been a real problem in our schools, especially this year with COVID. So we think this would be a way to help offset those issues.
So just to recap, the instructional aid will be assigned to a school, but not necessarily a classroom.
Right. They will be assigned to a school, and they'll still be itinerant, but not assigned to a particular classroom.
So they'll report every day to somebody in the school, and that person will
yes.
place them into wherever they need to go.
Wherever they need to go, exactly, within that
And
building.
they'll figure that out. And then they can serve as a substitute teacher if there's a need, if you're short substitutes that day.
Yes.
Go in. Okay.
Yes. Mhm. What's happening in some of our schools, some of our services that we are able to give our students through, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's PE, those particular, whatever area, other areas, those special areas. So if we have a teacher that's out, a lot of those individuals are filling other slots. And so when they fill those other slots, that takes away opportunities for students in our buildings. And so this way, it gives that aide an opportunity to go into that classroom or go into that particular spot so that we can continue the other programs that's going throughout our buildings.
So are these instructional aids, are these temporary positions, or will they be?
These are temporary, yes,
Okay.
temporary positions.
What is the qualification of a aid right now? Because we already have these, right?
Yes, we have aides, and these are essentially the same. It's just the description of, in terms of serving as substitute as needed, was added. These are specific, for COVID relief, that's been added. They're itinerant, that's added. So the qualifications are basically the same in terms of high school diploma or equivalent. Assist with the instructional program of an assigned area. It's primarily the same. Yes.
So when COVID ends at some point, what happens to these instructional aid positions?
Well, as of right now, they're temporary, and then we'll look at, as we move forward, our need, do a needs assessment, and then make determinations based on that.
But with the job description, I mean, will it say COVID relief, or is that just part of this document? Will they be actual instructional aid?
There are actually instructional aids, but we just kind of identified it as COVID
Gotcha,
relief right
gotcha.
here.
Okay, but it is slightly different job description because it
Slightly different.
adds a substitute teacher in there.
Yes.
So this total was about $1 million a year, $1 million altogether with the subs and the COVID relief instructional aids. Is that about right? $1,060,000?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay. And financially, I don't know if Ms. Albana wants to answer. How does that impact our budget?
Mr. Curry, the substitute, increase approximately $150,000 a year. That would come from local funds and something we would prioritize in our local funds using our, local revenues where they increase. This is something we probably needed to do for quite some time. I know last year we went from 60 to 65, just to, manage and gradually take those steps. But this will have a long-term benefit with, minimal cost to the local fund budget. As far as the instructional aids, those are budgeted, in our CARES Act money, to, close some of the gaps with the learning, close some of the learning gaps over the past year. And that's another reason that I think it was, set up as COVID relief, but those would be covered, as temporary instructional aids, through the end of the school year, with the CARES Act fund.
Okay.
And then, of course, we would see where we were at that time.
Okay.
How far can you move them? Like if they're itinerant, how far can you move them? Like, are they staying in the same family?
So the way we've got this set up at this particular point is to actually have them within the same family. Just because of when you start looking at travel, and it just would work a lot better.
Tony to New Hope.
Yeah, that's a little, yeah. So it's set up to work within families.
Okay.
So when we go remote, or when we go hybrid, I guess they show up, do we call them in, or they just show up no matter what remote we're going in?
If we're hybrid, we're going hybrid, they would still go to the building, because we still have students in our buildings. They're just alternating days. And hybrid doesn't negate the need for the subs, or the additional services, especially with working with teachers who are, doing the remote, as well as doing the face-to-face. So they will report to the building just like everyone else.
And if we went full remote, hopefully we won't, but what would they do then?
Well, even if we went full remote, they are still would be needed in terms of, there's a lot of instructional things that's taking place in the buildings with our teachers, so we'll actually be able to utilize them, because there's still some services that will actually be going on. Because being that they're instructional aids, they still will service the instructional program within the building, and that's, serving and working with teachers in essential duties that they actually have.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. If everybody's ready, we'll go ahead and we'll gavel into special session. So, the Madison County Board of Education is in special session for Tuesday, December 1st, 2020.
I recommend approval of the agenda dated December the 1st, 2020.
Motion.
Second.
I have a recommendation for the approval of the agenda dated December 1st, 2020. Any discussion? If there is none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Administrative items. I recommend approval of the instructional aid COVID relief job description as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of instructional aid, COVID relief, job description as submitted. Any additional discussion or questions? If there are none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 I recommend approval to amend the 2020-2021 salary schedule for a pay increase to both teacher and hourly support substitutes.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval to amend the 2020-2021 salary schedule for a pay increase to both teacher and hourly support substitutes. Any additional discussions or questions? If there are none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right. That concludes our special session for the evening. We do have to go into executive session to discuss litigation, and Cynthia, you brought a certificate? Okay. We'll do the executive session in this room, but we'll go ahead and give everybody about 5 minutes to clear out, and then we'll reconvene in here at about 6:40. So I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion.
Yes, motion to into executive session.
Motion.
Have a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn into executive session. We will come back in here, we just have to come back in here to adjourn. We won't be voting on anything. So we will come back in here to adjourn, but you're more than welcome to hang around if you like. I don't know how long that'll be. Any further discussion? If none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned into executive session.
We're staying in here, Dave?
Yeah, we're staying in here.
Okay.
Yeah, don't need to move.
So what will end up